Ah.
Rocking out.
Uh,
I like it.
and then it cuts over to
Ooh.
this
Yeah.
with this. Oh, you
One of
see?
my heroes.
One of your heroes. All right, I'm going to put us back into the gallery mode. Angus, I'm just going to let you go collect Russell,
All
and
right.
we'll meet you back here at 7:30.
All right.
All right.
I will see you at
As of
7:30.
this moment, we're on time.
When,
You're
when
gonna talk
does,
about my ring?
I
Yes,
love
we
it.
are going to talk about your
Yeah.
ring.
Oh, I love it.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right,
All right, see you in a
man.
minute.
See you in a
All
minute.
right. See you at 7:30.
Well, you know, when we decided to do this, it was to decode some of the iconography in rock and roll, and I was intrigued by that, and it was funny that we decided to start off with the skulls, but I had no idea of the origin of the skulls, and that's where you come in. This is Brad Congress and Colby Congress. They're going to be joining us on Mondays for this.
Well, thank you so much for
Cool.
incredible
Cool.
introduction.
yes,
Yeah.
we love the graphics. Thank you, Steve.
I know it's a good place to start.
Yeah, it would have been. I would have been better if I had started on my. I don't know. Man, you know, there's storms. I have no idea what happened. But yes, you know, this is fun. So I'm excited about this whole thing. Is this where it started? And how do you listen? How do you correlate the whole thing?
Okay.
You launch.
Let me start this off because this is going to be like a big bang. Okay, a lot's going to happen, and we're going to have to pick it apart to put it back together to understand it. But this is the story in a nutshell. I have been studying signs, symbols, and their meanings since I was a kid. I love jewelry and gemology and all the stories that go with it, and it really goes back to ancient times, to pirate times, to rock and roll. For some reason, people put stuff on their body, and they have these little images sometimes that will tell us a story. And some people know it, some people don't. Well, my goal, I've always wanted to know why, where it came from, and what is its influence.
Wow.
And how it started for Brad, oddly enough, was coinage.
Yeah.
When he studied
Wow.
ancient coins from, way before.
BC era.
Yeah, I mean, just
6th century BC.
Yeah.
And one of my specialties is actually Spanish coinage. And when I was a kid growing up, and I love rock, always had loved rock. And I noticed that there were always these great symbols on their album covers and all of the
t-shirts,
t-shirts and the
tattoos,
tattoos. Yeah, you name it.
jewelry.
It had the greatest icons, and there were always these forbidden subjects. You know, you weren't supposed to study about satanic worship, and you weren't supposed to look into this and Black Sabbath and biting off heads. And it was like, Jesus, it was like, I don't know, it was like Technicolor. It worked for me. I fell in love with rock in all of its facets and forms.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
I started to study and have continued to study all of these parts and pieces that so many have misunderstood over time. And when you and I were talking, and Colby and I were talking about, coming up with something fun, this was just natural for me. I was meant to do this. We're actually,
It's going to be the world according to Brad.
well,
So the rock and roll iconic world, according to
And it
Brad,
will be-
certainly going to be all right.
It will be fascinating.
So
let's
that skull right there is a very important skull. That is the skull of Blackbeard.
I should try to fit into this.
Yeah, that's right. Also known as Edward Teach was his name. He
But
was
when you say it's the skull of Blackbeard, it's obviously not his real skull. That's the one that
this
he
was on his
used.
flag. That was on his flag. He was known for having a single black skull on a black sail. I mean, white skull on a black sail. And it had a very definitive meaning at that time. And we're going to get into that meaning just a little bit because it goes back just a little further. There's another famous skull black sail that has the skull and crossbones on it, which we've seen many, many times.
Mhm.
That's been nicknamed the Jolly Roger.
Right.
And the reason why they call it the Jolly Roger is because he was a French Mason, Freemason. And in Freemasonry, the skull and crossbones has a very specific meaning. And it's to stare into your own mortality and have it stare back at you and have you understand what that means. Because all of us must meet this end. And this symbolism was borrowed even from the occult, and it's followed throughout history. But when Jolly Roger put it on his black sail, he inspired a group of many other pirates to do the same thing. And what it meant is, we will live free if we are going to be damned by the governments that try to control us, the boot of Spain. But we will die free. And that mentality, that rebel of core value of I'd rather live on my own terms than be controlled by another, has been the battle cry for rock and roll all the way through. And I nominate Ozzy Osbourne as Blackbeard.
Oh, okay. Well, we can make
It
that
sounds
happen.
like the more
Oh,
things
yeah.
change and more they stay the same.
Because when he and Black Sabbath, put their seminal album together, the occult had something to do with it, the inspiration. Again, up until that point, for the most part, rock and roll had been defined by a couple of things. You had Elvis Presley in America, and he was this positive, driving force of energy. Much of it positive, beautiful love stories, rock and roll, electrified. But he was a showman, and which is great. But then we had the Beatles from the other coast, and across the pond. And they started out with this type of wholesome image, and it evolved. But then as that evolution, the White Album, which was just unbelievable, guitar, heavy. But then we had Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, that absolutely took no shame in their core of wanting to live life on their own term, to not be controlled by anyone, and throwing down the gauntlet and changing the cultural and the literal world. Because honestly, the whole visceral exchange that Ozzy had and Led Zeppelin had and Dio, Rainbow, Iron Maiden, these guys, they just changed the mold by embracing the darkness and created a complicated character. I to this day, I listen to heavy metal every day because I find something new about it, whether it be through the music, the audible information that can be found, some of the acoustical dynamics found in the music match in tune to much of the symbolism. And that's where, again, the skull is this, exclamation point of this unilateral collection of mayhem, of literal and cultural ways. And that's what rock and roll is. And that's what piracy was in the early days. See, piracy had to happen because there was so much dogmatic, overreaching oppression from the Spanish boot. It really put the heavy on the early happenings of America. And you had the Queen Anne's War in the late 1600s, which cost, so many people's lives. And it was a never-ending, no-winning war. All of these groups of these hodgepodge, crazy pirates threw down the gauntlet, said, absolutely, we're not going to take this shit anymore. We're going to take out any boat in our trailway. And they cost the Spanish Armada literally over 1/3 of their GDP in 1 year because of the mayhem that they caused. That mayhem made it so the Spain could not come into the Americas deeper. So they actually changed the course of how the Americas was shaped, the pirates. And
Wow.
it was incredible. And that is very much, again, my thesis of how heavy metal changed rock.
Well, that's, I mean, it certainly did. It changed everything. I remember when Black Sabbath came out, and although, and there's some witchery and trickery in there, there was a lot of darkness from Page living in Aleister Crowley's house.
Right.
Is that part and parcel of the same, thread of?
Yeah. Aleister Crowley was a brilliant subject, although obviously many of his actions are extremely questionable. But his wantingness to peer into the unknown, what is past what we know? And that is a really important question for all of us to keep asking.
It's it's interesting that so many guys have embraced the skull, and we were joking because I showed you this skull that's on.
Yeah, that's a different one. But I have a question. Okay.
But it's very similar to this skull.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look how it matriculates. The skull is one of these things. You can go through anything. It's going to be in all rock.
Okay, but the Jolly Ranger.
No, Jolly Roger.
Jolly Roger.
Jolly Rancher. Jolly Rancher was
Jolly
right.
Roger has the bones, so that's a different kind of skull.
Well, his is right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's Freemason. That's the
Well,
Freemason skull.
So that's different meaning.
Well, it's the same meaning. The crossed bones are actually the thigh bones. And that those are the heaviest part of the body, the lower portion, and the head. So they brought together, and they showed this to show also that's where we get the term X marks the spot.
Oh, that's where that came from?
Yeah.
And what was the meaning of the whole thighs and what was the meaning of that?
Well, they use that. I don't want to be giving away too many. Okay, sometimes I know things that are sometimes frowned upon, talked about, but I don't care. It's time to talk about some of this stuff. East, I'm pointing east, oddly enough. East is a very important direction because the skull and crossbones typically would be faced east to awake in the morning. That's a whole nother story we'll get to another day, but there was a specific reason to have that as the base structure for the head to sit on, because the skull and crossbones have been utilized actually as a symbol for the morning come over.
And then
Well, he's going to have to tell us what.
I have the skull ring now.
Yeah, meaning business. A lot of pirate flags also had a skull or a skull and crossbones, and also an hourglass on it, meaning that time is running out. Your mortality is about to happen when you meet one of the pirate people. And that would be a really nice way to meet someone and show them how you do business.
Wow. That's that's very rock and roll.
Okay, he's going to have to tell us what the Zoso.
Yeah, we're going to have to go
for.
into the Led Zeppelin letters, those weird letters that they came up with.
So that will be next time, or some.
All right, next time.
Next week.
Awesome. And oh, by the way, my wife Colby has a guitar that is incredible, and on the outside of it, it's got the Zoso on there.
Yeah.
And we will go into
Oh.
Yeah, she's a cool rock chick.
All right.
Oh, I know. We've known Colby a while. We know you guys, and
you're both cool.
yeah. So we're very happy to have this feature added to the show, and also happy to bring a little focus on Bradley's Jewelers because nothing says pirate treasure.
It says treasure.
Bradley's Jewelers.
The pirates would get some booty there.
But there are. I've heard about the things that you've done with coins, and that it's pretty amazing.
Well, coins are artifacts that truly can explain many things.
They're a window into our history.
Into our history, and because it's an artifact, it's an art, it's a fact. It is not my interpretation, it's about our understanding. And it's really important because many times people like to pretend that the history is one thing, but the fact is let's figure it out and find out how fascinating the truth of the history is. And that's really, you may be up in the sky in the International Space Station,
Right.
but this is my layer. I want to let you, I've got this thing set up. I have so many books that I've collected over the course of probably 40 years. And I'm constantly obsessed to find out more about the place
This is
we're
the
in.
place where we need it. This is the place where we need it.
Well, one of
That's
our
for sure.
viewers just said she loves skulls. So do you know the meaning behind that?
Behind what?
She loves skulls, Kitty Tiger.
Yeah, these are skulls.
I know, but she loves them.
Well, one of the things that I find also, people are naturally some people are scared of skulls, but I've always been fascinated by them. It's actually one of my most fascinating subjects to actually talk about, only because it allows you to see, it could be anybody, but it could be yourself. Because
that's the truth.
we're all going to be. Look at, the Guns N' Roses. I mean, I remember when that album came out and I saw those skulls on there. And by the way, that cross that those skulls are on is a variety of a Spanish cross mixed with, on the interior, it looks like it has an Irish knot style in there. We'll talk about that. That's got some funness to it.
Oh, this is awesome, man.
Yeah.
When Appetite for Destruction came in, Axl Rose, he's a fascinating subject because he's a brilliant writer, thinker, composer, and he puts a lot of thought in his iconography. We'll go into Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 because that's amazing iconography. But today, those skulls on there is obviously the band. Yeah. And then if you kind of look at it, you can kind of find Axl in there. We can definitely find Slash. He's easy. Yeah. And there you go. And it's just, they're always going to be those guys.
And remember, there's always shock value. When you use these different icons from ancient times and the last several centuries, it's shock value. And, but there's a lot of meaning behind it. Most people just don't kind of understand that it's there. So that's what Brad will hopefully explain to you guys over the course of many of these great.
Well, that's cool. This has been a great learning experience.
Yeah.
And what I